This is William Brent Bell, and you're listening to Don't Go Out There podcast.
In a world where zombies, ghosts, serial killers, and vampires all exist, it's Nico, Brian, Mike, and Dustin, and they are all that stand between you and the films that could end the world. Welcome to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Podcast. Just want to thank all of our fans and listeners. Really appreciate the support. You guys are awesome. Before we get into tonight's film review, just want to give a quick shout out to our website, don'tgoouthere.com. Everything about our podcast is on the website. All of our episodes and interviews, if you want to check those out. We've done some incredible interviews in the past. Go check them out there in a specific tab by themselves so you don't have to scroll through hundreds of episodes on Apple or Spotify, etc. We also have our store if you want to grab a shirt, a mouse pad, a hat, all that good stuff. We'd love to see your pictures, rep your favorite podcast. And Shan's Etsy page is also attached if you want to grab a tumbler. All of our social media links are on there as well. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. Like us, subscribe us, follow us, all that good stuff. And the last thing I want to shout out on our website is our Patreon. We call it Blood Donors. We have the traditional monthly reoccurring kind. If you want to support us, help us pay the bills, as we say. Or if there's a movie you want us to review, that option is available as well. Just check out our website, don'tgoouthere.com. Also, if you haven't noticed, we've recently joined the Believe Network. So there's some ads on our program now. But if you want ad-free content, go check us out on Blood Donors. The ad-free episodes will be available there. We appreciate your support. We hope you enjoy the episode.
All right, guys, jump to the film review. We're going to be concluding our free month of picks with Brother Dustin's pick. Dustin, you want to announce your pick and why you picked it?
Yeah, so I want to start this by saying support cinema. Go watch movies, because if I hadn't done that, I would have never watched this movie, just to be honest with you. I've got Regal Unlimited. I saw a movie was playing that was horror. Sean Patrick Flannery's in it. I was like, he's a good actor. Let's go see this movie called Nefarious, 2022. I think it was 22. I went and saw it, and I was like, holy shit. Like, regardless of what you think about the movie, the premise of the movie, the messages in the movie, whatever, you cannot take away from Sean Patrick Flannery's performance in this movie. I'm not exaggerating when I say that it's one of the best performances by an actor I think I've ever seen. So we all thought it was going to be a tough movie to do notes on because it's so heavy dialogue ridden, which is the reason I've waited until now to pick it. But I thought, fuck it, let's just knock it out. It's Nefarious.
All right, I'll go next. This is a movie like I saw in theaters as well, based off of Dustin's review. I enjoy the movie. I like it for what it is. I can't argue at all with you. Sean Patrick Flannery gives a fantastic performance. This is just a flick that I'm not going to turn on too often. I'll watch it once every now and then, just because it's mostly two guys just talking to each other. And, I'm doing some analysis tonight, and I'll get into some thoughts on the message it sends. And, I think it's a good movie. I don't think it's a 10 just because it's not super rewatchable.
Yeah.
I didn't see this as quickly as I think the other three guys here, or at least two of them I know. But when I finally did, and listen, I'm doing the scene by scene tonight, so I'm just going to go ahead and say it. And I know you guys have already touched on it. It's already been said, but Sean Patrick Flannery's performance is one of the best that I've seen put on film, not just in horror. I've said multiple times before that I believe in this stuff as well. So to me, this could easily be nonfiction. I think it's terrifying and something that truly just transcends not just time, but really just everything, in my opinion. This movie stuck with me more than probably any has. Like right there with Passion of the Christ, and even to an extent the first time I watched True Detective Season 1, as far as just sticking in my head. A perfect movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, so as we normally do on the show, y'all know the rules. Never seen the movie, so first watch with the notes here. But I heard you guys talking about it and did eventually mean to check it out and just never got around to it. And I'm going to be honest, I thought it was really good. Like, kind of like Nico said, I do think it is a really good movie. Not super rewatchable. It reminds me of another movie called Mass, where it's kind of about school shooting parents meeting each other in a basement. That's the whole movie. It kind of acts out more like a stage play almost in the same way, where it's just pretty much two guys talking in a room for the entire film. I thought it was really captivating, though. The dialogue, which I had a hard time taking notes on because you really need to just sit down and watch these two communicate with each other in the way they do. I think they do a great job bantering off of each other. Great acting performances on both sides. And I think the mood and atmosphere of the tension is caught really, really well on film. Like, I think it always feels like I'm nervous or feels like it's tense. Whether, what I do or don't believe in is kind of thrown out the door here because they do such a good job conveying the story on screen. So I think it's really well written. I think it's really well cast. You guys mentioned Sean Patrick Flannery, who I agree with all of you, does a phenomenal job. But again, like Nico said, not something I'm going to just like throw on for shits and gigs. Like it's not, it's not Halloween 1978 or anything for me, or Scream 4, but it is a movie that I'm like, wow, that was really fucking good. I'm glad I watched that.
I feel like even if you hate the movie, you got to appreciate the acting at least. Like,
I don't know how you could hate the movie because the story is
I do.
really good. Oh, well, okay.
Yeah, I can understand if some people would hate it.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. Yeah.
All right, B. Hath, whenever you want to take over scene by scene, go ahead, brother.
All right, fellas. You guys got anything else you want to throw out there before we start this beast?
No.
No, sir.
Let's do it. All right, we open up with Dr. Alan Fisher appearing to be closing up shop at his office and straightening his PhD, and which keeps falling back to being crooked again. Before committing suicide, as we see him fly by the window of his office, which was kind of got a little bit of a laugh out of me, and a little bit, being honest, and the frame straightening itself back out. Title card, Nefarious. At an Oklahoma State Penitentiary, psychiatrist Dr. James Martin arrives to evaluate a notorious serial killer named Edward Wayne Brady. Not the guy from Whose Line Is It Anyway? Who is currently a death row inmate. The prison warden, Tom Moss, warns Dr. Martin, who has just replaced Dr. Alan Fisher, who committed suicide after previously interviewing the inmate, that Edward is an expert manipulator who can get inside of your head. Edward is scheduled to be put to death by electrocution at 11 that night, and Dr. Martin is tasked with determining whether the killer is legally sane or if he's mentally ill and incompetent of the crimes that he's committed. Moss hopes that Martin will disagree with Dr. Fisher, who is ready to declare Edward insane. In their first discussion, Edward inexplicably and instantly details various aspects of Dr. Martin's personal and professional life and insists that he's a demon named, yeah, fuck you, I'm not saying that on the air, but he will answer to Nefarious. Inhabiting Edward's body, Nefarious states that he was able to possess Edward as he was not baptized in a series of degrees of controls over his lifetime, and he wants James to write a story. He further details that despite the doctor's initial assumption, he is not trying to escape punishment and wants the body of his host to be executed. Nefarious tells Dr. Martin that before the day is over, he will also have committed 3 murders, though James states this is impossible. Nefarious states that their work with Edward is completed and it's time for him to go to hell. James calls for the chaplain over the radio, provoking Nefarious. He does it even further when James admits to being an atheist, calling him an ignorant sack of meat, and tells him that he wouldn't have any power over him whatsoever if it hadn't already been given to him by below. The lights begin to flicker, and then a light bulb busts as Nefarious tells him it was probably just a coincidence, Jimmy. Go ahead, Nico.
All right, 2 minutes into the movie, we get a doctor of psychology jumping out of a window to his death. And I say this respectfully, but you know he's going through some tough stuff if he can't deal with his own mental demons. Very creepy to see the diploma on the wall straighten itself as well. The warden sounds convinced Edward is guilty and is just ready to get this all over with. And he's like, all right, doc, just get this over with, please. Edward sounds off Dr. James' entire life story and background in a matter of seconds. If I was a doctor, I'd be fairly creeped out and be alert for anything with this guy. I, like Dustin and Brian, as soon as I hear a man tell me he's a demon, I'm pulling a SpongeBob and I'm a head out because I don't mess with demons like that. Dr. James drops the line of holding life and death over Edward, and he claps back, all power was given to him from below. I'm going to say this again. Dude, I'm not messing with this guy. Like, I do not mess with demons. And I didn't have a lot. This is my last bit, Mike. But the bursting bulb would be my final straw. Movie over. I'm out. As this set of scenes ends, I'm invested due to the great performances by both actors.
Yeah, again, I got to be honest, I knew nothing about the movie. Even though you guys have talked about it in the chat, I think it's kind of a running joke or a running truth that sometimes I miss some things as they scroll through or as I don't tend to scroll up that often. So going in, I knew nothing. Seeing a murder / true crime case was a somewhat refreshing take here because I at least did know it was about a demon because obviously the diploma moved. I'm like, well, it's a ghost or a demon, so something happened here. I did like the line, welcome to the least happy place on earth. Yeah, that's probably true about a prison, to be honest, unless you're at the tippy top making a lot of money off of it, of course. And again, I like this dialogue back and forth. I like the way they're setting the story up, letting me kind of know who Edward / Nefarious is as a character before we even meet him. I'm not gonna lie, there's a minute here in the film I'm like, are you sure this guy just isn't on the spectrum somewhere? Like, it's okay. I am. A lot of us are. Like, no big deal. But just the way he was kind of moving and talking, I'm like, hey, seems like a pretty normal guy. That would change pretty quickly here. Look, I'll just be honest. If you guys sat across from me and told me that you were possessed by a demon, I wouldn't believe you either. So I'm going in my mind, with this view of this doctor. Maybe not the whole movie, but at this point in my notes, I certainly was. I didn't like the fact that he said Nefarious isn't a real name. I mean, what is a name anyway? Like Mike, Nico, Dustin, and Brian are names the same way, Topanga Lawrence is a name, so whatever. Anyway, that's right, buddy. I, again, love this scene and the back and forth between these two. They're totally opposite people, too. Like the demon, obviously, and this doctor who doesn't believe in any of this stuff. I just love their different approaches to this interrogation or discussion or interview or whatever you want to call it. I think it's really good. And it honestly, and this movie does it a couple times. It explains demonic possession in a very matter-of-fact, blunt way that's like, oh, man, I never even thought about it from this angle before. I thought that was really interesting. Last thing, light bulb. If I were the doctor, the light bulb would at least maybe kind of change my mind a little bit. I would have Dustin's porched it as soon as that light bulb broke. Go ahead.
Yeah, great score in the opening. It's very eerie. And then Buddy looked miserable on the elevator. So those two things combined, you knew something bad was about to happen. And I love that the frame straightened itself up on the wall after he jumped. Great way to show us that something sinister was afoot. So, sidebar, Wayne as a middle name. I know it's a popular middle name for serial killers. You think John Wayne Gacy, but my ex-wife told me that I couldn't use Wayne as a middle name because of that reason. But Brady as a last name, Wayne Brady, come on. Like you said, Brian, whose line is it anyway? The warden saying that every time Brady's name comes up, something happens. That's a great touch. Lets us know that this won't be a routine open and shut evaluation. Great seeds planted in their whole conversation. And then the fucking show begins. Sean Patrick Flannery knocks it out of the park. The nuances in how he portrays Nefarious and then Brady is just incredible. I want to interview him so badly. So let's clip this part. Let's put it on TikTok, Instagram, X, everywhere. Sean, we would love to chat with you about this movie and the rest of your career. We've kind of communicated with you about it before, and I think timing didn't work out, but please come on the show. Him saying that he can't die and that he's a demon, that's a great turn. We're like 10 minutes in and we get this revelation. Great start. I love how Nefarious has this bit of arrogance mixed with a bit of sense of humor. When Martin said he wouldn't call him Lord High Prince, his response was, okie dokie. Like, I gotta chuckle out of that. What an asshole. His secret is a doozy. Before you leave, you'll have committed 3 murders. Bold claim. And then, of course, doctor's going to be like, I'm not going to kill anyone. What are you talking about? The way Nefarious refers to Edward is fantastic. He talks like a clear-cut multiple personality disorder, but it's so much worse. Just a ton of great dialogue and acting here. Nefarious telling Martin that if he's just a man, then he won't do much. But if he is who he says he is, and then berates Martin for his arrogance and thinking that being an atheist protects him. And then I never knew that a blown light bulb could be such an effective jump scare. Like, that got me. Damn good opening set of scenes, but it gets so much better.
For sure. Note to self, if I ever get possessed by a demon, which would be because of Nico or Mike on this show, but note to self, don't ask Mike for help, apparently, because he wouldn't believe me. Wow.
I need some proof, brother.
What an asshole.
Proof.
Father Lewis enters the room, causing Nefarious to go into an uproar, telling him that nobody wants him in there. The priest admits to never having met a demon, and Nefarious relaxes as he finds out the priest doesn't even believe in demonic possession. He then kicks out Father Lewis, and James takes another seat, asking him for him to prove that he is a demon, and asks to be invited into his head. Ooh, bad call, brother. To which he hesitantly agrees, if he lets him speak to Edward. Nefarious lets him, but to little success, where Edward tells the doctor about the bad things he does and that he is powerless to stop him because he owns him. Just heartbreaking, honestly. James tells Edward that Dr. Fisher thought he had a dissociative identity disorder, like Dustin just mentioned, with Nefarious only being an alter personality. Edward breaks down when discussing the murders before Nefarious returns. He accuses Martin of euthanizing his terminally ill mother as a means to acquire his inheritance from her, and that she was an inconvenience, and that this is murder number 1. James becomes defensive, stating that the decision was made after meticulous examination, and angrily threatens to end their interview. Nefarious tells Martin it's okay to take a break, that he's not going anywhere. Go ahead, Nico.
All right, Mike, I don't have a lot, so I'm just giving you a heads up. But we get a very strong reaction from Edward when the priest enters. Sean Patrick Flannery does fantastic as he switches over to his human form, as I'll call it. The show of panic, facial acting, the eye twitching, his busy hand syndrome, constantly moving his hand, the way he hesitates while talking, I think he does fantastic. And I will now compliment him swapping back instantly to his Nefarious form. Can't compliment him enough for how he can just turn the switch on between each character. Dr. James is losing control of the game as Edward is tap dancing all over the subject of his mother's death. I thought that was really strong as well. Like the warden mentioned earlier, he's very manipulative, and he was proving him right. This is the last thing I got. Just another strong scene between both actors doing a great job.
Yeah, man. Did they get a Titanic survivor to play Father Lou? This man was old as hell. Anyway, sorry, my bad. That was rude. Again, I'm conflicted when watching these two because I am super skeptical when it comes to this demon stuff. But I'm not really sure I would be posturing in the way that this doctor is. Like, he's very nonchalant, really don't love his approach, I guess. But it makes me intrigued. They had me hooked. Like Nico said in the last set of scenes, just watching them talk has me glued to the screen. It has me interested. I want to hear more of this conversation. I just don't think I would play this, prove it to me game with him either. You're kind of giving in to what he's really looking for here, in my opinion. But on the flip side, this defense would not hold weight with me in court either. So I don't know. But your heart does break for Edward regardless, because, you get these little glimpses of Edward, and I have a comment on that later, but you get these little glimpses of the actual Edward, and you're like, fuck, man, that tugs at you. It's tough. It really is. This scene talking about his mom really hit home with me right now. I'm not going to lie. That was really, really hard, really, really tough. That was a really tough way to end that set of scenes for sure.
Yeah, Nefarious freaking out when the priest entered. That was great. As was him referring to Jesus as the carpenter throughout. I don't know why, but that was funny to me. It's like so disrespectful.
Yeah.
A priest who doesn't believe in demonic possession, that's odd. Like, I don't know if that's consensus among the clergy these days. Like he said, our understanding has gone so much beyond that. I don't know. I don't talk to many priests. I'm not Catholic, but Buddy booked it out of there, though. Ran from the grind, afraid of some real work. And then I expected something much bigger and more tense when he invited Nefarious in. He's like, I invite you in, and then nothing happened. But it sets it up. I love the transition from Nefarious to Edward, and I love the camera usage to reveal it. Like, the camera pans behind Martin from one side to the other, and when we see Brady again, he's actually Brady. That was effective. That was really well done. The difference in Nefarious and Edward as portrayed by Flannery is just incredible. It's like he had to learn and develop two different characters and learn two roles for this movie. Just hats off. Incredible stuff. Listening to him play Edward with my eyes closed, I thought Mike was talking. Okay, just kidding, brother. I love you. I'm sorry. He did stutter a lot,
Come
though.
on, man.
But he stuttered much more than you. I was just kidding.
I don't know, buddy. You ever heard me book a truck?
And then we get the switch back right before our eyes. Just incredible how Flannery just transformed like that. Which I know they may have broken that up in 2 takes. They'd have to. That would be incredible if he just flipped the switch and did it. But I would believe it. Just a masterclass in acting. This set of scenes from Flannery progressing nicely.
Yeah, while you were talking, I was thinking that exact same thing. I was like, man, I wonder how they shot that. Did he do all of the Edward takes? Did he do all the Nefarious takes at one? Like, or I would love to see him transition like that. That would be amazing. Come on the show, Sean. James walks over to the walkie-talkie and sits back down as Nefarious asks if he's ready for round 2, to which James replies that he didn't know he was in a fight. Nefarious says, that's why you're losing. James sets ground rules, and Nefarious says he's done talking about his mommy. He tells James once again that he brought him there to write his book and the Demon's Manifesto. James questions Nefarious on the overall demonic plan and how idiotic it is that they revolted about a so-called all-powerful being. Nefarious states that he's only heard one side of the story, and the rebellion accomplished something beautiful. He continues to tell the story of the beginning and the fall from grace, and how they were eternally condemned for rebellion against slavery, and how human creation was a slap in their face, to which they began their eternal mission, to destroy humanity. God created humanity in his own image, but Satan remade us in his. And to me, like, just sidebar, to me, that was so freaking powerful. Like, I've obviously never thought, because everybody's a hero in their own story. And so hearing the other side of the story that you hear your whole entire life was crazy to me. Martin stands up and declares that Edward believes everything he's saying and resolves to certify the prisoner to be unfit to be executed for murders. As the doctor is leaving, however, Nefarious begins to talk about the doctor's troubled relationship with his pregnant girlfriend, Melanie, and claims that at that very moment, she is at an abortion clinic, mistakenly determined to rid the couple's relationship of what she sees as the reason he might leave her. He says he could call and stop the entire thing. James loses emotional control, saying that they can do what they want to. The demon likens the practice of abortion to ancient pagan child sacrifices to... I'm not saying that demon's name either. And tells him that the carpenter agonizes as demons and humans together rip apart God's creation inside the womb. He begins counting down as the abortion takes place, gleefully exclaiming that all hell is rejoicing. As James rushes out of his cell, Nefarious looks at him and says, "That's 2, James."
This set starts off with a great quote. I didn't know this was a fight. That's why you're losing. Sheesh, what a bar. Theology from a demon, and I promise I'm not getting preachy here, but this is just something that I believe personally as well. That's one thing I think a lot of Christians and non-believers don't understand. Demons know all about God, the Bible themselves too, so don't get caught slacking. It's at this moment, I checked the time, and I'm at the 38-ish minute mark. There's a lot of strong dialogue delivery from Sean Patrick Flannery, but I got to admit, I'm struggling to take notes here. I'm just kind of watching and listening to what they're talking about. As Dr. James walks away, Nefarious hits him with a draw 4 and now brings up his relationship with his girlfriend, Melanie. I'm honestly wondering who's the psychologist in this, because Nefarious is cooking brother James over here. More strong acting as this set of scene ends, but I must admit it's gotten very difficult to take notes. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, I don't have a ton the rest of the film because the movie would just kind of grip me. I wanted to pay attention, but I mean, I would have lost my shit too. You know, if I were the doctor here, if I were Martin, I'd have a tough time conversing with this guy for sure. This guy's quick-witted, and I have a hard time going back and forth with him, man. Truck drivers don't have shit on this guy. I can talk to them all day. I don't know how much longer I could sit in a room with this guy. I do like that we have the demon here fully acknowledge God's existence. Almost as like a way of, yeah, okay, sure, God, but what about this? Like, almost like a way of kind of acknowledging, humbling him a little bit, but also like kind of, you know, talking bad on his name as well. Like, I really like the fact that he kind of like, wait, you believe in God? Yeah, I do. Unfortunately for us, he's real. Unfortunately for all of us. So I really like that bit. I think it helped quite a bit. Answering yes to hell being a state of being or physical place. I thought that was a great line for sure. And man, Nico, you're not wrong. My man, Nefarious Edward was fucking cooking here, brother. When he's, you know, he asked him why he can't, you know, have him executed. Why? Because he doesn't have 3.6 million. That's, whoo, that is tough. That is a line for the ages right there. Really compelling to watch. And again, some of the dialogue from Ed Farious, as I'm just going to call him here, you just have to watch. Like, I can't keep quoting dialogue over and over again. It's just really, really good. And I do like how they're rolling out this 3 murders thing that's already been hinted at. I love the way it kind of like trickles out in different ways you're not expecting. So I thought that was very creative.
So Martin's whole speech about his personal life not being the focus here is great and all, but I feel like he should have been asking how he knew all that. Like, if he doesn't believe he's a demon, he should at least be curious. He didn't once ask, like, how do you know this? A demon who understands the value of patience is great. Great foreshadowing. The invitation was extended, but he didn't say it had to be immediate. Like, he didn't say, I'll let you in right now and right now only. So I think that's good foreshadowing. Pretty good story of angels and demons here. I can understand how non-Christians wouldn't like this movie. But, I mean, you watch a movie about demon possessions, you have to expect some talk of Christianity. When he starts talking to James about the abortion, that should be enough to convince James that he's not bullshitting. But instead, the movie takes a bit of a downturn. James argues with him, for the sake of the story, despite that not being likely and the dialogue being a little too daytime TV soap opera from James. And then, this is the part of the movie where I completely understand all the criticisms about the movie being, right-wing propaganda, Christian propaganda, whatever you want to call it. And look, I'm not discussing abortion on this show. Believe what you want. It's not up for me to decide. But it is odd that people have, left half-star reviews for this movie on Letterboxd based solely on this scene. Like, that's what we were talking about. Appreciate Flannery's performance, if nothing else. It's worth more than half a star. And, more good acting was on display in this set of scenes from Flannery. So we move onward.
Hits him with the draw 4. Man, I loved that line, Nico.
That was good.
We open with James begging to be let out of the cell. The guard lets James use the phone, but when he checks his messages, he finds out that the abortion has already taken place. Back in the cell, the guard asks for the order for his last meal. Edward responds wanting a bacon double cheeseburger, fries, and a shake, declaring how important it is to him. That's another heartbreaking scene, too. Upon realizing this, Nefarious takes back over Edward and stops the guard and tells him he changed his mind to not put in the order. God, what an asshole. James continues to question everything as he sits in the courtyard talking with the warden, who offers him a cigarette to console him and tells him that he needs a decision in 60 more minutes. Dr. Martin returns to the room with Nefarious, asking how he knew. Nefarious asks him to tell him what he'd like to hear because he doesn't believe anything he tells him. He begins to speak in Latin, tells him that his name is Legion, one of many. He continues to explain how demons have affected humanity in all aspects of the rules, which makes Nefarious laugh and then destroys him with the real-world facts that counter every single thing he says, including that there are more slaves in the world today than the Romans at the height of their empire, that there is evil everywhere now and nobody even cares, through desensitizing the masses through the media. That's a bar, too. They test the generator, pausing their conversation quickly, revealing that Nefarious chose the chair over lethal injection as his parting gift to Edward. Edward then proceeds to tell James how to get rid of Nefarious before being cut off and taken back over, then punished by Nefarious by breaking one of Edward's fingers and putting it back into place. Nefarious tells the doctor that he wants him to serve as an author of an already written satanic book called The Dark Gospel, and offers to give him everything he wants from his master, as was once offered to a carpenter in biblical times, who declined. Explaining that he has chosen Dr. Martin to bring forth this work to deceive and mislead all of God's created human race, comparing the purpose of the book as the opposite of the gospel in the New Testament. A guard then enters the room to tell him that the warden wants to see him.
All right, Jordan Belfi, he's not as good as Sean Patrick Flannery, but I don't think he gets enough props. Jordan Belfi as Dr. James starts his set of scenes off with some more strong emotional acting after what Nefarious just said to him. You can see his emotional shift, and it's so well acted. And speaking of strong acting, I'm very impressed by Sean Patrick Flannery's ability to go from emotionally broken and battered Edward to the strong force to be reckoned with Nefarious. I would not want Dr. James' job. I got 60 minutes, and that's all the time I have left to determine whether a man gets to keep his life or not. Would not want those problems. And Dustin, kind of like you mentioned in the last set of scenes, I'm going to piggyback off that a little bit as well. But it's just my opinion. But it's from about the 40 to 45 minute mark to now the 56 to 1 hour mark, where you decide if you like this movie or not. There's a lot of strong viewpoints, issues, hot topics that have been conveyed. And I can see why this movie is so split amongst the audience, whether you like it or hate it. And I'm not going to get into those topics either because we're not one of those podcasts. And all right, Dr. James, this is the moment where you need to get out of this cell. This man just broke his finger and then fixes it himself. All right, Bubba, I'm gone. And apologies to keep using time marks, but at the 1 hour and 2-ish minute mark, it really set on me that this is a great way to do a demon possession movie. We've seen so many over the top, levitating, making doors and windows shut, beds move, dressers fly around. But this is just a simple portrayal of a man possessed telling his mission and work. I think that might be the best aspect of the movie, just a unique demon possession portrayal.
Yeah. Man, I'm not going to lie. Just if you remove all the stuff that everyone says about the movie for a second here, this would be fucking devastating to hear. Or at least this phone call scene is devastating to me. Especially when you find out, that she's, it's going to be an hour before you hear from her and all that. Like, just, oh, God, I thought it was really well acted. And like you said, the ability for Sean Patrick Flanery to kind of hop in and out of Nefarious and Edward is really masterful to me. Just a great performance, and does it so many times. I just think it's great. This motherfucker, make no mistake about it, is evil. Okay? Maybe I'm just a good guesser, is a knife to the freaking gut. Okay? That is an evil line for sure. And then he starts speaking Latin. And then that moment, I'm like, yeah, let's just put this guy in the electric chair, man. I know it's not Edward's fault, but we have to do what we have to do for sure. Again, I will say their dialogue, and I get some of the criticisms, their dialogue about societal issues here, I think feels forced. It just feels forced. Not in a movie that I think is already kind of really set me up to be super interested. I don't know. Like, it's not really what I want from a movie most of the time, to be honest. He's evil and he has a sense of humor because he tells them, I don't like needles. Again, this demon is a very complex, layered character for sure. And like I said, him explaining the execution of Christ with the cross and everything, and how he lays it out from like another perspective, I thought was very fascinating and interesting. Really gripping storytelling and delivery, in my opinion. Yeah, man, from this like demon perspective that I don't really know if I've ever heard, at least not in a movie before. I did have to stop here to take a dump, so I was kind of sad about that because it left me on a cliffhanger. But in my notes, I wanted to note that I had to take a shit, and I was mad at myself because I was really into the film. I was invested. But anyway, go ahead.
Jesus Christ, Mike.
James being too late calling his girlfriend. Again, I'm not discussing abortion beliefs, but going strictly, off of what Nefarious said, that's two. So he should start taking him more seriously. Brady ordering his last meal is sad as hell, man. And Nefarious canceling the order may be the most evil thing he did in this whole movie. What a prick. A lot of generic dialogue and scenarios in this movie outside of Flannery's character. The cigarette scene and most of James's questioning is unseasoned baked chicken. Just not much there. Then, sorry, my Latin's a little rusty. Buddy, if the subtitles didn't say in Latin beside his words, I wouldn't have known that was Latin. I wonder how many people would have recognized, oh, he's speaking Latin. I think the more logical thing for him to do would be to say, is that Latin? What language is that? At least for me. Next is more cases of why I understand why people say this movie is right-wing propaganda. James's speech about all the hot button issues and saying that they're reclaiming the moral high ground while portraying his character as someone who seems decent but is built in to be a bad person in the story. And Nefarious saying, being a demon who is thrilled with the state of the world. Look, I get it. But again, I didn't let that overshadow Flannery's performance for me. Nefarious is offering James the world for his services. That's a good touch. Temptation is the oldest trick in Satan's playbook. It's not my favorite set of scenes, but Flannery still captivated me.
All right, fellas. When the doctor is called away by Warden Moss, it is revealed that a scrapbook of Martin's life and the manuscript for the Dark Gospel have been found in the prisoner's cell. The warden attempts to scare James into thinking that one night, if he lets him live, he will end up at the foot of his bed. What do you mean by that? James says he needs to ask him just one more question and re-enters the room with Nefarious. Nefarious claims to have known and been with Dr. Martin since he was a child. He then proceeds to dislocate fingers on his hand, escaping the handcuffs, and begins to strangle the doctor, threatening to kill him unless he begs for his life. Martin concedes and tells him he doesn't want to die. Releasing James, the prison guards forcefully restrain and beat him while James signs a document declaring that Edward is sane enough to be executed. In doing so, Nefarious declares that the doctor has now committed 3 murders: his mother, his unborn child, and the prisoner, telling them he wants James to be there at the execution to see what he's done. Something we find out that he's going to do in another cigarette-led conversation between he and the warden. The warden describes the execution in detail to James and gives him the cigarettes, telling James he's going to need them more than him. Later that evening, we see Edward getting his hair cut. The barber tells Nefarious that nothing he's done and can't be forgiven, as he proceeds to quote Shakespeare, and we are shown the conclusion of the haircut, being told nobody is going to miss him. Edward is then showed crying in his cell, asking the guard why he didn't get his last meal. The guard tells him he declined it, and Edward continues to cry, saying he never said that, in a heartbreaking performance by Sean Patrick Flanery, and the next set of scenes is the ending.
Warden shows Dr. James all these pictures of his younger self and the already written book. Dude, I hate to keep saying this, but I would be so creeped out. And I hate to admit this, but Warden just convinced me that if I was Dr. James to execute him with the one night he'll be at the foot of your bed line, yeah, you're out, buddy. I'm sorry. No clue how the guards don't see Nefarious break his own hand and slide out the cuff, but who knows? Maybe these guys are just getting paid like $10 an hour to be there. Intense moment when Nefarious grabs James and chokes him on the table with the chain. I thought that was great. And this is just me speculating, but this choking dialogue confirms in my mind that Edward Wayne Brady name is inspired from John Wayne Gacy, like you mentioned earlier, Dustin, because he used choking as his modus operandi too. Pretty big reach, in my opinion, of Edward to say that's 3 for James when he writes off on his execution. I mean, that's his job. Like, he's supposed to do that for you. I mean, you killed 6 people. Great job by the makeup team on Sean's eyes, having that bruised, battered, crying effect, and the look of his broken pinky. I thought that all looked great. My apologies for not looking that up. And I'm just going to end this set of scenes with more compliments to his performance, wanting his final meal. Like, Sean just is, you said it, Dustin, like a 0.5 rating. I mean, just his acting should have got at least 1.5.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, us finding out that he has this book of all of the doctor's like stuff and notes and everything like that just planted a little seed of doubt for me for just a moment. Like, maybe this motherfucker's just crazy. But no, I don't think that's insane, or I don't think that's the case. I think he's a little bit more than insane. But I would find him fit for an execution as well. So. I mean, it's kind of a win-win. This version of the demon is gone. And if he's not a demon, then he's insane and I need him dead. So, I mean, the dude has been stalking me, so I need to put him away for sure, if that were the case. But the whole scene is intense as fuck here, man. I just felt so bad for Edward the whole time. I mean, it's just really the real Edward is not guilty man. He's not a guilty man in my eyes. By the law, of course, sure, of course he is. And I thought Nefarious with a little off the top. He has a big evening is, man, okay, this motherfucker is evil for sure. And again, last thing, Edward crying was just a tough watch the whole time. I thought Sean Patrick Flanery's performance here as Edward just took it up to another level because him going back and forth was really, 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 really gripping to watch.
Yeah, great revelation that the stuff in Brady's cell and, seeing all that, but the dialogue isn't the best between the warden and James, more that unseasoned chicken I was talking about. The thunder is also a little too hokey for me. It felt unnecessary and forced to drive home the mood. I don't think the guards would have just stood down when he attacked James. They have guns and tasers. Like, they wouldn't have just stood there and watched what happened. Him signing the papers that he's competent and, stands to be executed is pretty predictable, but it also does make the 3 according to Nefarious. So it has to be weighing on James's mind. Random thought. Being the death row barber has to be like the most depressing profession there is. Like, being in prison would suck bad enough, but imagine being the barber. That's a lot of weight to weigh on someone. The saddest thing in this whole movie. What about my meal? Man. Poor Edward. I felt terrible for the guy. I'm ready for the finish.
All right, fellas, here's the ending. James is shown entering the execution room, being given the rules expected of the audience during the procedure. Leading to the execution, a terrified Edward begins to plead for his life and continues to state that the murders were not the actions of his own. And in his final moments, while sitting in the electric chair, Nefarious again takes control and asks Martin whether he accepts the offer that was made earlier in exchange for publishing the Devil's Gospel, to which Martin shakes his head no. Edward suffers a painful and prolonged death by electrocution. The disembodied demonic Nefarious takes the chance to speak to the doctor, stating that he should have taken the offer, before possessing Martin and forcing him to hold up a gun to those in attendance and then attempt suicide. Martin spontaneously asks God for help, and the gun he is using misfires. 1 year later, a visibly changed Martin is in a TV studio promoting a novel he wrote titled A Nefarious Plot, explaining that he has written it as a warning against the reality of the demonic forces tempting all of us. In the discussion during the interview, Dr. James Martin concedes that he experienced a miracle, as a firearm had been attempted 3 times while he was possessed, and it did not work, as the gun, when tested by forensics, it functioned properly. Concluding that he is now agnostic in his approach to what happened, he expressed interest in learning more about God and Christianity. Upon leaving the studio, he encounters a homeless woman who ominously addresses him by name and asks if Dr. Martin missed her, evidently now the possessed host of Nefarious.
I just realized it was kind of funny that I'm wearing a Late Night with the Devil shirt as we review Nefarious. But anywho, no way on God's green earth would I sit in on this execution if I was Dr. James. I have no desire to ever see this. I wonder what goes through I've mentioned this several times during like our series show, but I wonder what goes through an actor's mind when they must act out a scene like an electrocution. Creepy moment as Nefarious asks James if he accepts his master's offer, but the coinciding loud score was a bit much for me, but that's a very minor nitpick. But I did think the score was fine when he's being electrocuted. I think they could have just left that part out whenever he was being asked. Very intense Randy Orton moment when Dr. James out of nowhere snaps and grabs the detective's gun and goes berserk. Man tried to shoot himself, but the gun was empty or misfired. Sheesh. Imagine surviving that, boys. If I was Dr. James and knowing the bullet had 3 distinct gunfire marks but didn't fire, but then fired later on, that would scar me for life. That would change me as a person. The interview segment between Dr. James and Glenn Beck, it's okay, but it drags in my opinion. We've already had a movie that was primarily just conversation. This could have been tidied up and shortened up a lot in my opinion. And I distinctly remember disliking this end scene with the nefarious voice coming from the homeless woman. And I still think this stinks. It would have been fine. It would have been a fine ending to the movie if you just end it as he leaves the studio. I think this was just added for one last scare, and it was not needed in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, God, this is such a good acting performance that it's so good that I have mixed emotions going into this execution. I really do, because obviously the demon in here is a bastard, but he is a demon, and so even if Edward is killed, he's going on to the next body. So very tough to sit through for sure. I mean, it was heartbreaking, 100%. I just wasn't expecting it to hit as hard as it did for me. It got me, pretty emotional. This man got it worse than Dale in the Green Mile. I mean, Dale had a dry sponge, and oh God, man, if I see the actor that played Percy in anything else, I immediately want to fucking beat him up because he played that role so well. Anyway, like Nico said, out of fucking nowhere, Nefarious has taken over his body here. The entity is in there. I like that twist. I didn't see it coming at the time, and it kind of caught me off guard. And I thought it was a really well acted scene as well. Just him kind of like losing it briefly, gun up to the chin, I thought was really good. This Glenn Beck stuff drags, and it's not, it's nothing against Glenn Beck. I just don't think it was necessary.
A lot against him.
Well, I know, but I'm just trying to level it out here. That's all. I understand. But I did want to mention that it looked like Glenn Beck has eaten Glenn Beck, because I honestly had not seen GB. I'm like, who the hell is this guy? So I'll show you the last time I watched anything with Glenn Beck. I will say on the ending, I thought it was okay. To me, the movie did such a good job of kind of grounding these characters in the midst of having like a demonic possession story that I don't necessarily think it was necessary. But anyway, it wasn't bad. I'm not going to sit here and say it was bad. I just don't know if it was needed. But all in all, outside of that little, last 5 minutes there in the end, I thought this was great acting performance and a really good film.
Nefarious is a real dick in his timing to let Edward experience certain parts but not others. Like, he let him realize that he's not getting his meal, but then he took back over when the warrant was ready to, prevent any delays, or when the warrant was read to prevent any delays, and then letting Edward experience the walk so he gets all that dread up to the chair and the hookup. It's just making the man suffer as much as possible. And he switched back again to ask James for his answer. James has to be questioning his decision at this point. The actual execution was brutal to watch. I couldn't imagine getting fried up. Seems like the absolute worst way to go. And James hearing Nefarious' voice and freaking out was, I don't know. Like, I like the idea, but I don't really care for how it was played out and how it was portrayed. Also, him taking the gun and pointing it at people, like, that's a crime. He would have went to jail. He wouldn't have gotten to, get out of this room and go straight to the Glenn Beck show. Segue. My biggest takeaway from this ending is this. Fuck Glenn Beck. I audibly groaned in the theater when I saw him on the screen. Thankfully, it's brief, but it did drag. It went on. I was curious about that, Nico. I'm glad you said that part drug as well, because I thought it was just my disdain for the man. He sucks as a person. This scene, or that scene, seems too hokey to me as well. Like, it's a completely different tone than the rest of the movie had been up to that point, and it goes on too long. I do kind of like the woman saying hello, James, and in Nefarious' voice, asking if it missed him. I kind of like that because it shows that the demon didn't die. The evil's not over. It's still out there, and it will continue to follow him and follow in the world. So I was fine with that. Overall, though, is an okay ending.
All right, guys, you got any fun facts from the share here?
Oh, Dustin, you got any? I'll go if you don't.
I got a couple. You go ahead, and I'll just mark them off.
Okay, I literally just got these, but Sean Patrick Flanery explained in an interview that the script was so well written that there was no improvisation from him except for maybe 2 syllables. That's impressive, considering how much he talks in this movie.
Right.
According to an on-set exorcist, one of his favorite scenes in the film because of its realism was when the weary psychiatrist expresses, "I didn't know I was in a fight," to which a demon responds, "That's why you're losing." That's such a bar, man. And the last one I got is in a scene. I think this one's really cool. In a scene where a priest approaches Nefarious, who seems frightened, some of the hair on Sean Patrick Flanery's head is briefly formed into the shape of horns, which then settle back down when he realizes the priest is not taking his role seriously and therefore harmless. I like that.
Yeah, I saw that. I like that one too, because it was very subtle too. Like, I didn't notice it until I read that. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. So I just got a couple. According to Vatican-approved priest / exorcist named Reverend Gary Thomas, this was the most realistically accurate film about demonic possession the Reverend had ever seen. So I think that's a pretty good stamp of approval. Yeah. And then the last one I've got is according to co-writer / director Kerry Solomon. One of the reasons that made him decide to make this film was when he saw a poll in which 7 out of 10 people believed they had some form of mental illness or mental disorder, and 4 out of those 7 people believed that their disorder was demonically inflicted. So that's interesting.
Wow. Absolutely.
Nope.
Go ahead, Mike. Tell us about the money, man.
Nefarious was made for a budget of $3 million, and it grossed about $6.4 million at the box office, which, hey, for a, kind of a not a very well publicized movie, not a lot of marketing, no big push behind it, $6.4 million made its budget back, and it has a lot of online criticism, and yet I think that kind of helped people, go out and see it. So, yeah, $6.4 million, pretty well done.
I would have never known about it if it wasn't for Dustin telling me. Yeah. All right, we'll jump over to IG real quick. All right, this guy's name is ass_clap. One of the most slept on films last year. It has its flaws, but ended up being one of my favorites from 2023. All right, brother. And
Nice.
Hyped on Horror commented, I didn't love this one, but I didn't hate it either with the shrug emoji. And I was like, that's fair. I can understand why you'd love it or hate it, honestly.
Ass_clap. That's got to be up there. That's got to be up there.
That's right up there with optional 13th Ghost.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
I'll go. I'll do X real quick. The artist formerly known as Twitter. That guy at Millhouse14108 says, abhorrent Sean Patrick Flanery won't get the Oscar love he deserves. He was extraordinary in this film. Loved how this film made the audience on the same level as Dr. Martin, both trying to evaluate Nefarious' sanity. Two men talking in a room has never been so captivating. 9 out of 10.
All right, guys. Jump to our favorite kill, least favorite kill in the rating.
I didn't do kills because, I mean,
Yeah,
I guess,
didn't either.
okay. My favorite kill was Nefarious. My least favorite kill was Edward. Does that work? I felt bad
that's
for
fine
Edward.
too then.
That's fine.
But as far as my final thoughts in the rating, look, it's not perfect. I voiced my displeasures with parts of the movie throughout this review, and I understand completely why people disliked it for being too political / religiously biased. But my praise for the movie has always been consistent in that it's solely due to Sean Patrick Flannery's performance. One of the best acting jobs I've ever seen. He and he alone gets this movie a 7.25 for me. Probably would have been a little bit higher had Glenn Beck not been in it. Fuck Glenn Beck. Go ahead.
Damn. I said at the start of this, so I'm going to be quick and not really repeat myself since I've talked all evening, but I'll just leave this on this quote from the movie. There's a battle going on, a battle between good and evil, and we are all participants, willing or not. So I gave this movie a very deserving, in my opinion, perfect 10.
Nice. All right. Good deal. All right, I'll go ahead and go. I didn't do the kills either. I thought it was a really good movie. Very, very, I keep using the word gripping, but it was. It really just kind of hooked me in. It was the dialogue between the two, the banter back and forth, I thought was enough, worth a high enough rating by itself. And I thought they captured a really creepy, tense mood and atmosphere throughout the film, especially in that cell. I thought they did a really good job there. Obviously, I have some critiques. I think some of the social commentary is just unwarranted in a way, but I do think got to overlook that for something like this because Sean Patrick Flannery is just fucking phenomenal. And I think all the acting is really, really, really solid and really good. I gave this movie a 7.5.
All right, I have favorite and least favorite kill. My favorite kill is Nefarious. I thought the electrocution looked great. It was well acted. The effects were great. My least favorite was, this might be a copy, but I'm going with the doctor at the beginning who just jumped off the building. You didn't see it, and I mean, it was a kill technically.
That made me laugh.
Yeah.
I think we've said it all night, all four of us. The acting is great. I think the movie looks good. But to me, my biggest qualm really is it's just not super rewatchable. It's an hour and 38 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's hour and 20 of it is just two people talking mostly.
Yeah.
Whether it be Warden and Doctor or Doctor and Sean,
Look, House.
I think come on now, brother. This ain't even in the same ballpark here. Robert Eggers is schooling these folks.
God.
I think the movie is real. I think it's good, and I think it's interesting, and I think it's one of the better made and portrayals of a demon possession movie. I grew up with this kind of stuff, so I do believe in it as well. I totally understand if, some people hate the movie for having different beliefs. I get that 100%, but I just enjoy the movie for the new take on a demonic approach and the great acting, especially from Sean. I gave it a flat 7.
All right. That gives us a composite score of 7.9375. We're higher than both of the gauges that we use. IMDb has it as 6.4. Rotten Tomatoes, 33%.
Sheesh. All right. Any final thoughts on Nefarious for just our blood donors? And Dustin, you can announce your pick for next theme. And Brian, you can announce your pick.
Yay.
All right, let's shout out these blood donors. Legendary blood donor Dana Tucker, not one, not two, but 3-time legendary blood donor. Camper level reoccurring, appreciate you, Dana. Camper level reoccurring Nina, Michelle Mirza, the Horror Movie Crew podcast, Alex Seligson, Michael Evans, and Steve Schmidt. Camp counselor reoccurring Edwin Hernandez Gunn, Joe Swinford, Shan, Adrian Aiello, Brian Samick, Andrew Ferguson, Matt Strickland, Brooke Maley, Thorne David Phillips, Heather Superdoc, Jennifer Davis from the Too Close to Home podcast. Dana Tucker is also a camp counselor blood donor. Appreciate you. Cole McAlexander and Max K. We really appreciate y'all. It means a lot. And I've said this already, past few weeks. A lot of names have been on that camp counselor list for a long time. It means a lot to us. Help us pay these bills. It is definitely, I can't stress it enough, not free to do this. And y'all take a big burden off of us. Thank you a lot.
Absolutely.
Dustin, you just finished a trek.
Yeah.
Go ahead and announce your pick for next month.
Let me talk to you. So,
Yeah.
February 17th, I told Nico that I was going to embark on a journey to watch every A24 movie ever made. At that point, I'd only seen 10 of them. Here we are. It's July 25th. I've seen them all now. Every movie that's been released except for one that's not available to watch in the United States is international release. I can't even find a nefarious way to watch that movie. But no pun intended. So I've watched every A24 movie there is. And so I thought, what better way to celebrate my reaching this finish line than to do an A24 themed month? I knew Brian was going to do backflips. Like his excitement, I could feel it through the text message when I announced it. So A24 month for August.
And Brian, you get the first pick. What's your pick, brother?
There you go. There you go, buddy.
One of the only A24 films that I like, but that's thanks to Alexander Garland writing it. He's one of my favorite writers. He wrote 28 Days Later. He wrote Dread. I love that movie. He's done a lot of stuff. The Beach. I like that movie. It's 2014's Ex Machina.
Yeah,
I like Ex Machina.
That was the 11th movie that I'd seen. That was the first one that I watched after I decided I was going to start this journey.
That was top 4 for you too, wasn't it? That was high up there for you.
It's up there. I did the 4-part series on TikTok, and we released them on Instagram as well. I've ranked the A24 quote-unquote horror movies, movies we would review on this podcast. It's very high on the list.
Okay. I'm excited. Never seen it. Never seen it. Let's go.
I think you like Alex Garland. I think you'd like Civil War as well. That's right up your alley.
I've had it. I've had it to watch, and I just haven't pulled the trigger yet.
I had Ex Machina third. It was third on my list.
Okay, third. Okay.
Yeah. Third out of 42. 3 out of 42. So high praise.
Yeah, I figured it was time to pick one of those higher ranked A24 movies to review on the show.
My goal is by the end of August, you're going to have 4 A24 movies that you can say, "Hey, I like this."
Okay.
I know he likes 2 of them at least because he's going to like Mike's pick as well. But we'll get to that when we get to it. We appreciate y'all listening. I'm looking forward to doing A24. I think it's going to be a good month, and I hope Brian's surprised pleasantly. Appreciate y'all listening. We'll be back next week.
Just want to remind everybody,